as you kind of travel through the 9 levels of hell, you sort of realise that he's guilty of all the sins he comes across.
Yeah, he's questioning every single level. He's like, is this where I belong? Is this where I belong?
Welcome to the Audiobook Club. I'm your host for this episode, Stephen. Are we calling it host? Anyway,
yeah,
we are now. with me are my 2 co-hosts. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Michael.
I'm Jonathan.
Happy days. This week we'll be talking about Inferno by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. But first, there's a couple of acknowledgements that we want to address. Me and Michael for the last episode.
We done gift up.
First off, I want to apologise for the clicking on my audio. I didn't realise that it was so bad. I had to listen back and it was kind of annoying, so won't happen this time. And the other thing was I was informed. I say informed. I actually mean shamed because I was told that out of the 3 of us that I was the only one that had to be bleeped multiple times. Apologies, but it's going to happen, I'm afraid. So
yeah, as I said,
Michael, do you want to?
Yeah, as I said to Stephen before we started recording, I have no issue with the bleeping at all. I think it's kind of funny. That's what the bleep is there for. But yeah, whatever. All I wanted to say is I know that on the intro and the outro, I introduced it as the Audiobook Podcast. It's the Audiobook Club Podcast. So. I could have re-recorded those parts, but I thought it was also kind of funny to keep those on as were. So, yeah. And I also wanted to say that while listening, I realised that I use listening and reading a lot interchangeably when I always mean listening. I think I'm going to probably continue that, to be honest. So just know that when I say, just know when I say reading, we're doing an audiobook podcast, I do mean listening.
Yeah, so these things are going to happen. Like it's early days. We're still kind of learning and finding our feet with it. So
definitely,
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go on to the book. So before we get into any like plot guess or review or anything, I just want to mention why I picked the book. And the reason was mainly to give it some attention. I think we're all aware that it's super obscure. I'd certainly never heard of it before about maybe a year ago or something. And I think when it was first published, it was kind of moderately popular, and then sort of went out of print for a couple of years and sort of faded into obscurity. And I thought the kind of premise was interesting, and I just wanted to kind of get it out there and see what people thought, see if they liked it as much as I did. So that's why I picked it. Don't know what you guys think about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I it was an interesting pick, definitely. It's a book I never heard of. When you said Inferno, you instantly said not the Dan Brown book. Right away, I thought that it was going to be the Dan Brown book, which I have read.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was an interesting pick, and I do think the premise is very interesting. It's like, it's nearly a premise where I'm like, why has this not been done more?
Yeah, I completely agree, Michael. It's something that's, you just think, how has this not been done? But no, I thought it was, something I definitely wouldn't have picked for myself. I've actually I've never even heard of the Dan Brown Inferno either, but I thought the book was something that I would like to read. To, like, it was kind of on the things that I would usually choose for myself. It's just like something that maybe if I had done a search for this kind of genre or whatever, I might have just skipped over just based on the name or whatever. But I think it was a good recommendation.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not one you'd come across often, and maybe not the best pick for the second episode, but whatever, it's done now. So let's jump into the sort of plot guess reveal from the last time. So you'll remember that I made the guys guess what they think the plot was going to be about. So the first note that I have here is that Michael, you thought it was going to be space hell. That's a quote.
Yeah.
Or a planet that resembles or represents hell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly, I think that's not a million miles away from the kind of what one of the main characters thinks himself. So
yeah, that is a good point.
Sort of on the money there, like.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, your guess was perfectly on the money, because you said Dante's Inferno, and obviously the book is heavily inspired by and draws from Dante's quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentioned many times, so yeah.
So did I won that one then?
I think if are we doing like a
I feel like we should do a point system, and I feel like I have 1 point now.
Okay, yeah, we'll do a point
it.
system, and you're in the lead, yeah.
So am I last?
You're last though.
I think you're last. Now I would like to add this in. If we're doing a point system, maybe you should get like 2 points, Jonathan, and I should get 1 because you guys. Well, no, I suppose I
think we'll just stick with me having 1 and you 2 having 0.
Okay,
that sounds good.
I didn't really do any work to earn a point, like, so that's fair enough. Okay, so after that you've read the book, is there anything you were like super surprised by that you wouldn't have guessed, or?
The thing that I was surprised most about this book was the genre. I was expecting a science fiction book, as my guess would say, but I would say this is more of a fantasy book, and I would even say slightly a horror book. Also, obviously, comedy mixed in as well, but there's definitely horror elements as well. So I would say the genre is what surprised me most. The take on hell is what surprised me, because I've always heard of Larry Niven's name and reference to science fiction, so that was what took me back most.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, some of the themes aren't too far away from science fiction. Obviously there's no tech or anything involved, so
I think the closest one is like the protagonist is a science fiction writer. That's definitely a draw in science fiction. There's a lot of references to science fiction. There's some to like L. Ron Hubbard and Asimov and everything.
Kurt Vonnegut
was
mentioned too, yeah.
But that's what surprised me most, that it was the horror elements. I was like, this is kind of brutal.
Well, it's hell. It's supposed to be brutal.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the whole kind of point. So yeah, Jonathan definitely wins that one anyway. Now that we're doing points, I'll have to. I was going to just do joke guesses the whole time, but I guess I'll have to try now. Okay, so before we get into actually reviewing the book, I'll do like a quick wee overview of the plot. Kind of as spoiler free as you can be, I suppose.
Just the premise,
Yeah, so the overview would be a science fiction writer finds himself in hell, but is initially skeptical about this fact. He's an agnostic and also, as I said, a science fiction writer, so he comes to believe that he has somehow been preserved after his death and is now in a futuristic sort of theme park, which is heavily based on Dante's Inferno. He thinks this theme park is controlled by aliens or some sort of advanced human civilization, and initially he is trapped as only a consciousness, but is freed by another of the damned, and the two travel through the 9 levels of hell, seeking the exit as described by Dante. So it's definitely a bit of a weird plot. Like, is there anything you want to add to that, or as an overview?
Actually, that was quite a good overview. It actually, the way you described that overview does make it sound slightly science fiction. You know, about the futuristic kind of side of thing. If always science fiction's always, obviously futuristic. So
yeah,
I suppose you could almost say that it is kind of. I suppose that's because it's his. He is a science fiction writer, and that's his belief. That's why it makes he jumps to these conclusions.
It's his kind of what's the term? It's kind of him like coming to terms with, well, maybe not coming to terms, but like making sense of where he is, because he's those two things, which are kind of polar opposites to where he finds himself. So yeah, as it was, because this is the second time I've actually read this book, but I actually forgot what happens on this before this read. So I was going through it and I was kind of thinking, is he in a theme park? Is that like twist ending? But yeah, we'll get to that. So without giving any spoilers again, we'll do like a quick review and then a spoiler review. the spoiler review will just be like the in-depth kind of one. So, without giving any spoilers, what do you guys think of the book overall?
I enjoyed the book. It was definitely a surprise. It was a surprising pick. It was a short book, wasn't it? It was only 5 hours. It was. Sometimes I was thinking, this could have nearly been a short story. This could have been an hour long book as well. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought the characters, it was quite quirky. It reminded me of this is probably a book we will touch on at some point, but it reminded me almost of Hitchhiker's kind of style at times. It wasn't quite that zany, but there was elements of comedy in this as well.
We're absolutely doing Hitchhikers, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of the greatest books of all time. We'll definitely get that. But
yeah.
But there was elements of comedy definitely, and this zaniness. There was also the horror that I touched on. It was like the dark and the good. I could see some people making a complaint that those tones, they don't necessarily go together, they're conflicting, but I quite like dark comedy. I think they do go together, the salty and the sweet kind of. I think it worked well together. There was a lot of satire to this, and even like vague criticisms maybe of religion, possibly, but I don't know if we can say it as a criticism of religion, because this depiction of hell is based on Dante's version of hell, not the biblical version of hell, which we'll get onto that in later parts of the episode, the differences between that. But yeah, I thought this was a really solid pick. I enjoyed it. I'm glad that we did do it.
I'm surprised by that, because we were chatting a couple of days ago, and you didn't tell me your thoughts, but I just got from your kind of demeanor that you didn't like it. So I was like, oh no.
Off air, Stephen asked me what I thought of this book, and I was very coy on that, but I was simply respecting the integrity of the podcast.
No, I shouldn't have asked. But, yeah, but just from your demeanor, I was like, oh, he hates it. He doesn't like it at all. Oh no.
I was just saving myself for the pod.
Yeah, let's keep it for the pod.
Yeah, I thought even more was agreeing with Michael. Like, I was kind of surprised by where the story kind of went. I thought, the best part of it is kind of the characters that they're made along the way. That is kind of the main premise of it, is kind of who they speak to. I guess we'll get into who those characters were in the spoiler review section, but that was the part I enjoyed the most, is kind of, you kind of, when you realise, this is kind of going to be, and we're going to be meeting these characters, who's it going to be meeting next. That was kind of where I got the enjoyment mostly out of it. And I guess too, the setting of hell as well is, it's, anything can happen there, I suppose, because it's kind of this torturous, like, magical place. Like, it's, the author could really do anything, so you don't really know what to expect in terms of things. And I thought, yeah, the dark comedy, it is funny the way it's described, but what actually is being described is, pain and suffering and stuff. So I thought that kind of contrast is good. I do enjoy that in books.
I would absolutely agree. One thing, and this touches on something Michael said there. He said it could be like a short story, and I do think there was a lot of fluff that could have been cut out.
Yeah,
that I'll get onto. But
it seems like a harsh criticism to make of a book that was only 5 hours, an audiobook that was only 5 hours long. But yeah, that feel like this could have been potentially been a short story rather than a novelette or novella, whatever length this would fall under.
Yeah, like there's definitely a few bits that could have been cut out, and I think I'll get onto that in the spoiler part. But yeah, for me then, I suppose, yeah, I would agree with the guys. I think it's a nice, in a strange way, a nice view of hell. There's a lot of obviously torture and stuff going on, but it's a nice, like, sort of body comedy, dark body comedy, I think I would describe it as. But I kind of like that sort of thing. So yeah, I'll take issue with some of the characters. Again, I'll touch on that in a bit. And yeah, that contrast is kept me interested anyway. So yeah, let's move on to some of the more in-depth stuff, and we'll start with characters again. So obviously we have the main character Valen. We've got Benito, who I'm keen to talk about. We've got what was his name, Corbett, who's like sort of a main character, but not. But yeah, I'll get on to that. We've got Billy, who's there, as well, and we've got a bunch of other denizens of hell. A lot of damned souls and demons. So there's a few characters to go through, but some will not have much to say on. So Alan, like, obviously he's not the nicest guy. I think the authors were very clearly trying to paint that picture at the start.
Yeah.
To kind of reinforce why he's in hell. There's a few things you kind of gather as you go along, and I think he actually addresses it himself later in the book. But as you kind of travel through the 9 levels of hell, you sort of realize that he's guilty of all the sins he comes across.
Yeah, he's questioning every single level. He's like, is this where I belong? Is this where I belong? Yeah, he's definitely not an innocent character. He's not the Andy Dufresne, I'm innocent kind of character. You have the sense like he's guilty of something, and it's just a matter of figuring out what it is, and then you gradually realize.
You notice that with a few characters, like as they go along, they're kind of like, oh, should I be here? But it's more kind of apparent with him. As you say, it's every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Except for one, I made a note of this, that one time there's one where he says absolutely couldn't be guilty of that, because it's the sort of selling holy offices for money one.
Yeah.
Which obviously, so like, what did you guys think of Alan? Do you think he was a good protagonist? Did you find him interesting, or what did you think?
I thought that he was a good protagonist. He, as you touched on, he's not the most sympathetic character. He's not a character we're asked, I don't think, too much to root for, but his conflict is interesting. I think that I like that he's got this kind of wry comedic point of view. He's like, the way he observes things is inherently funny, I think. So I did think he was a good protagonist, despite the fact that I don't know if I like him as a person. I don't know if you would want to have a beer with him afterwards or anything, but
no.
I thought he was
he's likely to jump out a window. So.
I thought he was a compelling protagonist. Yeah.
I think I'd agree with Michael. I guess as like he goes on further and he kind of sees more of the suffering too. Like I do remember he does try and like help a few people. Like I think he's maybe kind of there's the whole thought of hell is supposed to be the last test they see if you're eligible for heaven, essentially, kind of thing. And he feels like he does start to realize I should be trying to redeem myself, because there's like a scene where he's like, I think it's like in the frozen lake towards the end of the book, where he's like picking the icicles off people's eyes and things like that, trying to help them, but they seem not, they want to be helped, which I feel like that's the way he is at the start. He's not really too fussed about it at the minute. Like he's kind of, I suppose from his point of view, he views this as some kind of the sci-fi kind of theme park or whatever. But I feel like most people there, maybe did not believe that they were there, and now that they know that this is real, this is actually hell, they've kind of just given up, and this is the way it's going to be for them now. And I feel like he kind of realizes that towards the end, and he's like, right, I don't want this the way that this is how it's going to be. So
yeah, well, he thinks a lot of the people he meets are stooges, right? That they're kind of employed by the theme park to make it sort of real. So definitely noticed that as well. As he goes along, he kind of starts helping people. I can't remember exactly when it was, but there was one person he asked a couple chapters in, do you want to come along with us? And he kind of catches himself and thinks, why did I say that for? They'll slow us down, sort of thing. So yeah, you can sort of see him changing as you go. I think that might have been early on in the book, but yeah, definitely as it goes, he sort of sympathises with people more and more, which was interesting for sure.
Yeah, he definitely has an arc, I would say.
Yeah,
he definitely changes
he
changes over the course of the story.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, towards the end, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but I noticed towards the end that he switches between referring to himself as Carpenter and Carpentier.
Yeah,
which is his,
I did notice that. Yeah,
which is his like author. Name.
It's more interesting name. He says. I think he says he did it to make it more interesting or something like that.
Yeah, so I noticed that he was switching though, and I thought like that was him sort of acknowledging that he needs to change and not be that sort of
the same person he was before.
Self-absorbed, sort of guy, and become
I don't know
himself.
what you would feel about this, but I would say not every protagonist needs to have an arc. Not every protagonist needs to change. James Bond is an example, especially the older James Bond movies. The character is not any different at the end of the plot than he is at the start. But that's like the intention of those movies. James Bond is James Bond. I would say A Journey Through Hell is supposed to change you. So I would say an arc was essential for this kind of story. Yeah, and I would say it.
Well, I mean that's kind of crucial to the plot, really.
Yeah,
because
the whole famous transformation, kind of, isn't it? It's like it's at the heart of this book. Yeah,
I think the message of the book is that anyone can sort of redeem themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get on to that with the next character, but which I have issue with. But so anyone can change and sort of redeem themselves, and then thereby escape their own hell, sort of thing. So he kind of needed to have an arc. Yeah, it would have been kind of weird if he got to the end and he was the nicest guy ever, and you're kind of thinking, why is he in hell?
Yeah.
Or if he's the worst guy ever, why does he get to leave hell?
Exactly.
Which again we'll touch on in a wee second. But yeah. We'll move on to the next character now, the sort of second main character, which would be Benito himself, or Benny.
Yes.
So Benito serves as Alan's guide through hell, and is like this book's version of Virgil, which is one of the few things I know about Dante's Inferno. He's very vague about himself, and he tends to change the subject or ignore questions entirely when prompted. But it's clear that something's weird about him and something's not right. He seems to be able to wander hell freely, and nobody really tries to stop him. And it's alluded to that he's done this a couple of times. He's travelled through the levels more than once, or that he's been sent by God or something. So there's definitely a mystery to him. So let's cut right to it. What did you think about the reveal to his identity? Did you see it coming? Was it obvious, or what do you think? I should say first that he was revealed to be Mussolini the whole time.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, obviously he's introduced as Benito, and then from then on he kind of says that they call him Benny. Now I feel like if you knew that Mussolini's first name was Benito, which I didn't, and it's an Italian man called Benito, it should be easy to piece that together. He's in hell. But I didn't know, so I actually was surprised by it by the end.
Yeah, I was surprised. It was one of those twists where I'm like, was this supposed to be a twist and I was just being stupid? But from what I actually read reviews as well, and it seems like a lot of people were surprised by this, so it seems like it was an intentional twist. I was surprised that it was Mussolini. I think I've heard before in the past that his name was Benito, but I never made the connection at all to this character. That wasn't on my radar at all. That surprised me, and I found it was a satisfying twist as well, I thought.
Yeah, I did know that Mussolini's first name was Benito, but only because of the Lemon Demon song, Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. He's mentioned in that. But I wouldn't have pieced it together, like, just from that alone, and that he's Italian, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think what I would say though is that if they had called him Benny the whole time, it probably would have been more subtle. But maybe that's not needed.
Yeah, it seems
because he says to call him Benny, but Alan never does. So.
Yeah, it seemed like it was enough to fool most people. From what I've read, it seems like that'd catch most people off guard, and it's one of those twists where, like, how did I not see this? You feel stupid after. You're like, how?
I wonder if that was a conversation the sort of writers had while they were doing it. At first they said, okay, we'll call him, it'll be Mussolini. We'll call him Benny though, so that it's subtle. And, one of them was probably like, oh, but people won't know.
I wonder if they even decided that they decide like that it was Mussolini, from the get go, or like, well, right, we'll have some famous bad historical character. Could have been Hitler or whoever, Could have been.
I know. Imagine they had said Adolf. I mean, we all would have.
That would have been.
So obvious. I think that's why they probably like maybe wrote the story with this character or whatever, but then was like, okay, Benito, because it's maybe hard to guess that that's who they're talking about. That's why they chose him.
Mm-hmm.
Many people wouldn't know that because if the name was Adolf, you would know exactly who it is straight away. But
I'm surprised Hitler didn't make an appearance. Actually, he was mentioned by Mussolini, but
I was going to mention that as one of my maybe minor criticisms of the story is that I don't think it takes full advantage.
Hitler didn't get airtime.
I don't think it takes full advantage of the fact that it's in hell and you can literally introduce anybody. Like there is a bit of, I would say, a bit of balls to this book, but I think it could have had more balls. Like it could have went more places. It could have like criticized so many historical figures for like atrocities.
Charles Manson, things like that.
Yeah. But
he was probably still alive at the time the book was written.
Yeah, but wasn't he actually like in a bottle too? Well, the Manson murders were in the 60s, and the book was written in 76. But like, it's not even just him. Like maybe like Nero, like even like way like Roman, because he was like the Roman emperor, but he was like supposed to be really bad or whatever. But like there was like a big opportunity, I feel, and they maybe only like touched on a bit of it. But to be fair, the characters that were introduced were I did like. It was just I feel like there was a big opportunity there to get even more.
Yeah. I mean, like Billy the Kid, for example, like I don't think that was like a really inspired choice. I thought he was a fun character, but like you could have had like many different people.
I have different opinions about Billy, but we'll get to him.
Yeah.
So you were just saying there about obviously Manson was the 60s and in the books in the 70s, but now that I'm thinking about it, the book actually hell, time works weird in hell, right? It's mentioned a few times, and so you could have literally had people that were alive when the book was written, could have criticised them within the book, which would have been a lot of balls. But
I guess
because
like,
doesn't
wanted to criticise people that weren't alive anymore, that couldn't defend themselves.
Doesn't Carpenter he spends like a couple of decades on the bottle, so he's technically on the future and his version of the future anyway.
That, and it's mentioned that time works weird.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the first things Benito says, is that time doesn't, back to Benito, like my main problem with him is obviously he's Mussolini, right? That's a huge red flag, okay? But he's sort of presented in a sort of,
a sympathetic character.
Way.
I know.
A sympathetic, likeable way, which is a bit strange. Now, if it was Hitler, that would have...
I know.
You know what I'm saying? So he's presented as a kindly guide through hell who maybe loves God a bit too much, and it doesn't fit.
Because they mention a part where it's like he's kind of like sad about the people that were murdered in his like boardroom or whatever. Whenever he was killed, that he was like, I didn't really care about what they did to me. It was more the people that worked for me that maybe didn't deserve such horrible deaths or whatever. And it's trying to make you feel sorry for him, even though those people were probably all corrupt as well.
Yeah, because the people who wrote the book wouldn't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was alluding to when I said that I think the book had balls. It was like, is this really asking me to see Mussolini as a sympathetic character? It was like Carpenter like chucks him on the building when he finds out, and then it's like, oh, I guess we're done with Mussolini, and then he comes back and it's like, no, we're supposed to be rooting for him. It's like it was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, the book is, and another thing is, I think they had to pick a guy like that to be the guide, because obviously at the end of the book, Alan sort of makes him go to purgatory, or makes Benito go to purgatory or on or whatever, to show that anyone could do it, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of had to be one of the worst people who ever existed, sort of thing.
That is, but thematically, it fits.
Yeah, it fits, but I mean, I think that they could have expanded on, the other people that he helped escape, or maybe if he just got more people out, that might have softened the blow a bit, because 6 people out of hell doesn't really make up for Mussolini's actions.
No.
I don't think he deserves to get out after 6 people, but then again, how many's too many to say? I mean, you can't say he's helped thousands of people, because the demons probably would have stopped him or something, and then that breaks the plot as well. And but six doesn't seem to be enough.
It feels like a question too big for one podcast to answer.
Yeah, I just I mean, as I said, in a weird way, I sort of like Benito, right? But I'm kind of
I thought that the
conflicted with
choice
myself because he's Mussolini. Yeah,
I thought the choice was really solid. I thought it was interesting. I like you. I'm conflicted on whether to say it was why it was good, why it was bad, but at the very least, it was an interesting pick, and it had my attention.
like don't get me wrong. I don't think the authors are trying to justify Mussolini or kind of absolve him in any way. I don't know. It doesn't gel properly with my brain. So yeah. Okay. So Corbett. I can't remember his first name. Was it Glenn? Glenn Corbett? I don't know. The spaceship pilot. He sort of becomes a main character, but then he's like sort of a weird secondary character at the same time.
Yeah.
And he tags along, but he doesn't really do much, as I remember. He drives a car at one point. And I guess he's used as a sort of tool to demonstrate the healing abilities within Hell.
Yeah.
And he eventually returns to his rightful place, in inverted commas, showing that without change you can't move on, sort of thing. So he's like a metaphorical character.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't know. I think I said this at the start. I don't know if he was necessary to be in the plot. I think it might have worked better if it was just like a body picture, in a sense, where it's just them two traveling through hell and they meet these people. I don't think he contributed enough to kind of be worthy of main character.
It sort of breaks the way the plot works, doesn't it? Because the plot is very like episodic. It's like, and that's understandable given that Hell and Dante's vision is divided into 9 levels. It's like level 1, level 2, level 3 is each episode. It has to be broken down into segments like that. And it's like, oh, we'll meet these characters on level 3, we'll meet these characters on level 4. I think like it's giving any character beyond the Benito and Carpenter feels like too much spotlight. I think like these should all be individual adventures between the 9 levels. I do have something to say about the structure of using the 9 levels and when we're talking about plot, but I think a buddy comedy would have been the best way to approach it. I would say, yeah.
What about you, Johnny? Any feelings on Corbett?
I think he probably wasn't a necessary character. Simply because I don't really remember much about him. He wasn't memorable like Benito. I feel like everything said was kind of interesting and funny, whereas the stuff about Corbett, he was just like an extra body just to throw in there, just to maybe make it not as just the two people. But I agree with Michael. I think just them two going through, meet someone, have an interaction with them, and then move on. I think that was probably better and maybe a bit faster. You could have cut out all that extra detail that I don't think enhanced the story in any way.
Yeah. I mean, he's a tool, right? He's literally a tool to show.
Yeah, for the body. Yeah, that's the only kind of thing I remember about him is him like burning up, and I think Carpenter thinks that he's dead or he can't save him. Why is he trying to save him? But then he's like, oh no, he just regenerates. You can't die here. I'm just trying to put him out because he's in serious pain or whatever. But yeah, I think that probably could have just been described using Benito or Carpenter themselves anyway. We could have found out that information. So yeah, I don't think it was very necessary. But
yeah, I mean the next character I was going to talk about was Billy, and he's much the same. I mean, he's not really in it for very long, and a good chunk of when he's in it, he's actually like KO'd.
Yeah.
he's kind of sitting in the front of the car not doing anything because he's healing. But I think it's the same kind of thing. He doesn't need to be in the story, I don't think. And him joining was kind of strange for me. I'm not sure if I missed something there, but when they're going through the boiling blood lake or whatever, they pass the island and he kind of tags along. I feel like I missed something on the lesson there where he I don't know why he suddenly tagged along with him, But yeah, what do you think about Billy?
Yeah, I think I touched on it. I don't think
he's Billy the Kid.
Billy the Kid. Yeah, I actually listened to a podcast recently about Billy the Kid. He's an interesting historical figure. I just didn't think it was the most inspired choice for this particular story. I think you could have went more interesting places. Like I don't want. I'm nearly hesitant to name real people because this will make it very political. Like, what if we had a scene like Christopher Columbus or something like that? We'll just make the story a bit more biting or something. But yeah,
like I feel like too, he didn't like, you know. I feel like using characters with a specific talent, like you said, just like say like Christopher Columbus, and then he would be like, you know, someone that would help them sail across something or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It felt more like they were just like randomly there, not doing like much. Like, but it would have been better, say, like,
definitely. I mean, if it's going to do the episodic structure, it has to be like, it has to really capture. It has to be really imaginative. I feel like each level to be distinct and to differentiate itself beyond description, because when you're just describing what the levels are, you are just retelling Dante's Inferno. I mean, or
I think
the Divine Comedy,
because they meet like Al Capone, and like they could have had an opportunity where he's maybe still running like a big gang or something going on down in hell, and it's just like he's like living the life. Do you know what I mean? Like every character should kind of have their thing that they had in real life, or like before hell. But I just feel like it was an opportunity missed to do that.
Yeah, that is interesting, because like Benito says that he tried to start a government, so like I could absolutely see Al Capone, like, you know.
Yeah,
that is. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That is. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I think that is somewhere they could have expanded into, like, but yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, Billy and Corbett didn't really need to be there. I mean, Corbett drives a car and Billy pushes a guy into a pit or something. Yeah, didn't. Not the biggest impact, but yeah. And then lastly, I guess, are the demons that we meet along the way. Obviously, there's a bunch of lesser demons that are kind of quote unquote the guards, and they are, you know, the torturers and stuff. But there's a few we meet, like Charon and Geryon and Minos and stuff, that have like functions within hell. So if he's got any opinions on those or the portrayals, they're not in it for very long, but I mean,
I don't feel like a massive sense of conflict from characters, to be honest. It came more like, obviously because it's hell, it comes from the setting, the conflict. So I don't feel like a massive presence from the demons. They were here and there. They were just there to serve a function, really. I don't feel like nothing stood out to me particularly. I don't think it was bad, but it was just like, I don't feel a big presence from character, that any characters were causing that much of a threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, for me, like, they kind of got me thinking, like, why are they even there?
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're supposed to be, I guess, quote unquote, serving God's wishes or whatever, but like Geryon just helps Benito out every time, it seems, like, no bother. And I can't remember what the Minos part, but did he not just let them go or something?
He was like a gatekeeper or something, wasn't he? Like they let them through to some other part, or like a judge. Wasn't he a judge as well? Like he was like,
yeah, Minos was the judge. Yeah, but he kind of just let them pass. And
it doesn't seem like they were big obstacles or nothing.
Yeah, like, do you ever see the movie Seven?
Yeah.
You know how each murder like embodies one of the 7 deadly sins? Like, I think it would have been interesting, like, if one of the demons, if each of the demons like embodied one of the sins, to like make them more thematically fit with the levels or something like that, just to make them to differentiate them and everything.
Each level had a theme, and then like the demons, you know, was according to that theme, and it was almost like the boss, like a boss level of this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like gluttony, you have a huge demon who is eating people or something like that, you know.
Yeah, the glutton one. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the writers could do much with the demons, because they are, as I understand, very closely paralleled from Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know if they could change too much.
And I think it's worth.
They were going for that.
I don't know. Did we mention this at the start?
Mirror image.
Did we mention this at the start that none of us have read the Divine Comedy? I think it's just worth putting on here that none of us have actually read the original work.
Well, I was going to touch on that later. But yeah, none of us have read it.
Could be an audiobook recommended soon.
Coming to an audiobook club near
you. So yeah, the demons. The one that I think was the most impactful, I think, was the one that he met at the very end. Not Satan, not Lucifer. The I don't think it was actually named. It was in one of the bulges, and it was sort of torturing people, like cutting their heads off and stuff. I think he shoved a stake up Dracula.
Oh yes, yeah, I remember.
But he sort of there was a few interesting interactions with him and Alan. Doing obviously they played tic-tac-toe and stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, I was kind of catching myself thinking, why doesn't he let him travel back? Because he's not sort of forcing him into the pit, but he's not letting him return to the other levels either. It was kind of strange.
Yeah.
I thought we've talked about characters for far too long.
Yeah.
Now. Let's
get
move
it
on
on
to
with.
the plot. Let's move on to the plot. So, like, what do you think overall? Is obviously we said there's a few things we could cut out, so maybe we can touch on that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think it was a really good premise. Like the idea of going through Dante's version of hell and like an updated story. It's very good. It's just inherently, it's got a journey and everything. It has an arc that you can tie into it. Like I think the biggest weakness of the plot is the fact that it is episodic. You have the 9 levels and you have to go through each of them. I think that in itself can make it feel a bit repetitive at times. But overall, I thought, I think the premise is really strong. It made me think. As I was listening, I was thinking this would be a really good game. I don't know if there are many games based on Dante's Inferno, but
there is a game called Dante's Inferno, and it's really good. It is basically the same thing. It's about it is a boy. You're a guy that's journeying through hell, essentially trying to get out. Mm-hmm. So it is essentially the story.
Oh really?
Yeah,
I might look that up.
That's what I thought as I was listening. Yeah. Yeah,
I might look that up, but I kind of had a similar thought to you, Michael, about maybe this would be a good game, because obviously I didn't know that was the thing, but I was thinking like a sort of what do you call it, like maybe a point and click, like an old school point and click, or maybe like a sort of interactive movie. Those ones like the Telltale games.
Yeah.
Like the Walking Dead and stuff. I think it might work really well.
Like the interactive, like the person has like multiple options, multiple choices, and then they choose on, and you go based on that. And some choices might lead to failure, and some choices lead the way out.
Yeah, I think that would work really well, but maybe we'll have to do a game podcast.
We'll have to
talk about these things.
I think in terms of the plot, then I think I agree mostly, Michael. I think that the actual premise, the idea of them journeying two guys journeying through hell together, kind of encountering all the different settings, because there's like the boiling blood, and then there's like the ice pool as well. There's like all these different kind of tormented settings that are different, and then they find different people that befit that setting in terms of what their actual crime was on they land them in hell, and then meeting and speaking to those people. I thought that was a really good premise. I just think as we think we kind of touched on earlier, the fact they kind of missed the opportunity to take it even further. I just don't think that the actual interactions were as entertaining as they could have been, So the actual general idea is good, but they didn't really expand as much as I would have liked on it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think one of the things that I noticed again while reading it is those sort of characters that we meet. I believe Alan mentions the punishments a bunch of times, that the punishments seem really harsh for the crime that they committed.
That is a common theme,
eternal. Yeah, it's eternal punishment for even minor crimes, sort of thing. But I kind of caught myself thinking that maybe the purpose of that is because they won't change. They haven't really changed their ways, so they need to be punished in a sense. I think
that's. I think that, well, apart from maybe Alan and Benito, I think they're the strongest part of the book for me. I think the theme, how it ties together thematically, is like the next strongest part of the book, and that kind of as you were saying, it's hell is like it's people's sense of justice, and all our versions of hell, it's like does this minor sin, does this really justify this eternal suffering? And it's his sense of injustice as he's going through this and everything. It was it's interesting. I enjoyed that aspect of the book. It
Yeah, it got you thinking a little bit.
yeah.
One thing that I wanted to mention too was that I like that hell changes as time goes on. I think that's
That
a
was
really
interesting,
cool twist.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, but it got, again, like you said, it got me thinking, because obviously Benito's made this journey, what, 6 times, but
yeah,
the, what was it called, the suicide forest is moved or something, or it's gone
yeah.
to make way for some industrial part. So it kind of begs the question: how long between journeys?
Mm.
You know,
and
how long
that
does it take to travel?
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because like as society moves on, the nature of what constitutes a sin and what constitutes a punishment is going to change. So I thought that was a really interesting touch to add to hell.
Yeah, for sure. But it got me. It sort of provoked those sort of questions, like how long would it actually take to travel through the 9 levels? And obviously, it's a question we're never going to get answered, because, you know, it's kind of one of the running things of the joke that time kind of is weird in hell. But one metric that we get later on in the 8th circle is when, like, you know, the monks in one of the bulges, and when Alan's traveling back to rescue Benito, he mentions that he's seen him a week ago. And I thought, wow, was it a week, really? You were just talking like a chapter ago. It's kind of strange.
No, because like at the end too, they say it's like a 4,000 like meter or mile climb or something like that. I mean, you know, if you're climbing that amount, that would take ages. So usually like a lot of the things they have to do is like over a great distance. So I'm assuming this happens over in our time, you know, months or years. But obviously, like you mentioned before, that time is different in hell. So I'm not sure what their time generalization is, but yeah, I think it's over a long time of what seems like years to them.
Yeah, and he climbed out, but Alan sat watching him the whole time, which is like, wow.
Just sitting there watching this long climb.
Yeah. I mean, another thing, I wanted to move on to this too. You said, you know, it takes a long time. It's not really that apparent to us, is the glider part.
Oh yeah.
Like, how long was he building that glider for?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that is the main part that I would cut out of the book. I don't know why that it needed to exist.
So it was just a failed attempt. I suppose you had to try and try again.
I get that it was him. It was a way to show that he doesn't believe that he's in hell, and he thinks he can just fly over the wall, and that's it. So I know that Benito kept saying, you know, it's not going to work, but we tried anyway. We've got eternity. But I think there was quicker ways to wrap that up, you know, because
he goes through a lot of denial. I think it goes on too long. He think it's Inferno land. It is again. It's funny, especially from a science fiction writer. It makes sense that would be his rationalization of hell, but I think it just goes on too long. I like smart characters. I like characters who figure things out quick. I understand that there's a bit of a denial, especially when you're faced with something so implausible as waking up in eternity of hell. You're going to deny it, but it just goes on a wee bit too long for me. I think he should have came to the realization a bit sooner.
Definitely. But what do you think about the actual glider? Like, do you think there was a better way to deal with that? Because I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, how does he know how to build a glider? And how did he find all the stuff that he needs to build it?
It was a bit bizarre, yeah, that part, definitely. I felt myself a bit disengaged with that part. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess let's go to criticisms then. We kind of went through a few criticisms already, like with the characters and stuff of Corbett and demons and stuff, but is there any major concerns or criticisms that you have that you want to touch on?
I think that I said it earlier on too. I feel like this probably could have been a short story. I feel like this could have been, like, this is 5 hours. I feel like this could have been condensed into about 2 hours, maybe even possibly 1 hour.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So what would you cut out then? What do you think was unnecessary, other than the glider part?
I think the glider anyway, but different levels, describing them, I think a lot of that should have been cut out. I think you should have focused on, like, the writer should have been like, what do we really want to say of this book? What's the interesting heart of our theme? And let's focus on what 2 or 3 levels really exhibit this, and then we'll just play lip service and say they passed through this level, they passed through that level. They just focus on those levels a bit more, because I think going through the 9 levels, describing each. It's just, yeah, it's repetitive.
I think my criticism actually kind of touches on, I guess, what we're going to go into, the writing style and the narration.
Yeah.
I think the maybe to read as, because it's from a first person perspective, to read that is okay, but narrating, I feel, is a bit boring. Like, it's, you know, he does like the voice for Benny when Benny just says something, you know, he does the Italian accent or whatever, you know, it's interesting. But whenever you're narrating, you just do a general voice, and because a lot of the book is from that first person narration, it just seems a wee bit boring in terms of the actual performance of the, you know, the narrator. So I'm not sure that's his fault directly, or if it's because the book, it's, you know, from that first person, so it's more suited to be an actual read book rather than listened to book. But I think that's just something I maybe didn't enjoy about the book. You know, like last week we had Stephen Fry narrating Harry Potter. Harry Potter's obviously got a lot of characters who have a lot of, you know, Stephen Fry does a good performance of a lot of their voices and things.
He's a tough act to follow.
Yes. Yeah. So I just didn't find it as, you know, pleasing to the ears as that. So I think that is my main criticism, away from what all the other things that we've talked about the story. I think I've already covered everything that I would criticize about the story. But
I think we'll move on to the narration anyway, because I was going to get to that after, but I would agree, Jonathan. Like I found it kind of hard to follow at times. The character work that he did, I think, was pretty good. Like you said, Benito was really well done, and
the Italian accent was good.
You know,
solid.
Billy the Kid, I think it was it kind of helped me picture for Billy in a sense, and a few of the other characters. Yeah, I think his character voices were really good. But the narration and descriptions of stuff, I think, was a bit all over the place. Like, I don't know, maybe it's his way of talking, I don't know, but it seemed like some of the things he was saying was far too quick. And I found myself having to kind of go back to re-listen to a bit to kind of see what I missed.
It's that old science fiction style, isn't it? It's like that was like really popularized by the Twilight Zone, Rob Serling, isn't it? Yeah. Who does the Twilight Zone? Like it feels like that was the voice, the style of narration for science fiction for so long. But that's it.
Yeah, I think that took me out of it at times anyway. But it's not the worst I've heard. Let's put it that way. I mean, and I don't think it's a criticism on the narrator. Personally, I would agree with what Jonathan said there, and you know, it's kind of the style of the book rather than the performance. But yeah, it was definitely brought the total stars down for me anyway. I'll say that. So, like, what did you think about the style and stuff, Michael?
The narration style, like you guys alluded to, I thought it wasn't the strongest aspect of the book, but it did lose me at times. But I thought it really matched. He did well of like giving that kind of that wry comedic tone to Carpenter's or Carpenter, whatever, his point of view. I think he conveyed that really well. I think Benito, I don't know if I could say that it was a good Italian accent, but it was a good impression of an Italian accent. But it was I thought it was funny. It was entertaining at times. But I think this book started really strongly and it ended really strongly. But he lost me with his narration at times in the middle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. So the ratings, what would you guys rate this book? Let's start with you, Jonathan.
So based on I really like the premise, as I've said, and however, due to the missed opportunity of expanding on, you know, more interesting characters and actually giving them more detail and things like that, and the narration as well, I would say that based on our rating system, I would give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay, yeah. Michael, what about you?
Initially, I had it in my mind to give this a 4 for liked, but you guys nearly drove me down a bit because you made such good points. But I'm going to stick to my guns here. I say I liked this book. I thought it was an interesting premise. It lost me in the middle at times. I think it should have been shorter. I think a lot should have been cut. if this was a short story, I might have bumped this up to a 4.5, but I'm gonna stick with a 4 on this. I thought, and the narration was a bit of an issue at times, but overall I think he did well at capturing the protagonist's voice and their sense. He gave a good sense of what the character was about and everything. I felt.
Yeah, I think for me, I would. Okay, so I'm going to separate it into like plot, like the story and the narrator completely. But
yeah,
I think for the plot, I would give it a 4. I mean, if we were combining those two metrics, I would probably pull it down to a 3.5. But you know, as I was kind of writing down some notes for this episode, and I thought, if I was to read this book, actually read the book, I think it'd be far better. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, this is an audiobook podcast, so I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that.
Factors in, yeah.
So, but yeah, I would say plot 4, and for the narrator, I would give him a 3.
Yeah, it's a 3.5.
Yeah.
Average.
Yeah.
I would like to get a paper copy of the book and see how I get on, but it's too early.
Yeah.
Early to read it again.
Maybe next
year. I think that is a good point. Yeah.
But it might be difficult to get a copy because, as I said, it was out of print for a while. I don't know. Like, I think, as I said at the start, that's one of the reasons why I think that it's so obscure is because it went out of print in the 80s or the 70s, and it didn't, or maybe it was the 90s. I don't know, but it kind of resurfaced in the early 90s. But yeah, it might be tricky to get a copy. I don't know.
Yeah, because they released a sequel in like 2009, so I think maybe after that the first one might have become more popular again, and then maybe they might have printed more. I don't know.
That's probably what it was. They probably re-released it for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's easier now, but yeah, I think we're all agreed that this would probably be a better book read than listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let me see. Comparison to other media. So, like, obviously the big one is Dante's Inferno. Obviously, it's like a mirror of that one, or a retelling, as you said.
So, So anybody who doesn't know or isn't aware what that is, Dante was he was a medieval poet, well, a medieval writer actually from Italy. He wrote a poem called The Divine Comedy. It was split up into 3 different parts, one for hell, one for purgatory, and one for paradise. Inferno is the version of hell, which has 9 circles. So this book is it's kind of a retelling, but it's also kind of a sequel because it mentions Dante's Inferno. So Dante's Inferno exists within this book. They use that as a guide nearly. So it's hard to even say if this is a remake or if it's a retelling. It's something. It's on that spectrum of things anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, as we mentioned, none of us have ever read Dante's Inferno or any of the Divine Comedy. But what would you guys like to read that now or you know, seriously, would you like to go through it?
I would.
Not on the podcast, just to have a
just because of the history of it, like because it was obviously written many years ago. I guess because of this book, you know, and I think we are discussing our media, and there was that game I mentioned earlier, Dante's Inferno. It is an interesting kind of topic. The only thing that puts me off it is that it's a poem. I'm not a big fan of poetry, but I guess so is you know the Homer's Odyssey is like in poem style as well. It's not that a poem can't tell a great story still, so it's just not something
as far as I'm aware,
interested in.
Like epic poetry, historical style is quite different to like modern poetry, but I haven't read anything that far. The oldest book I've read is Don Quixote, which is from the 16th century, so I haven't read anything further back than that. So I couldn't say for certain, but I think there was a difference and what constitutes poetry and epic poetry at that time.
Yeah, but would you like to read it though? Like,
yes, I would. Well, I would give it a read someday. Yeah. I wouldn't. I'm not rushing out to get it or anything, but it's on my list.
Well, when you get around to it, let me know how that holds up. I saw.
So you're not intending?
I don't know if I have the time. You know, so much to do, Michael. How long is it? No. Probably won't.
It's
Unless you
an
unless you
epic
tell me
poem
it's
anyway,
amazing,
so
then I probably will. But
yeah.
I seen a quote from a Raymond Wilson, who I don't know who that is, but they said that it's almost entirely derivative and yet remarkably original. That is Inferno to Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to give it a wee mention.
The other thing to mention, I think, in other media as well, is the Dan Brown book, which I've read. It's not a retelling of A Journey Through Hell as such. It's like the typical Dan Brown thriller where they're on the run from these this underground conspiracy is happening, and they're on the run and they're trying to find clues in all these historical documents and stuff like that. It's a lot of Dan Brown gets a lot of criticism, but I enjoyed Inferno. I thought it was a good read.
Cool. Any other media to cover?
I guess just to maybe give a bit more detail on the actual Dante's Inferno game, which I did play. I think it was released. It was published by Electronic Arts, so EA.
It's in the game.
Yeah, it's in the game. It's essentially an action adventure game. It kind of just does, follow like going through Dante's 9 circles of hell. You know, you're battling demons, and usually there's kind of ends with like a boss at the end of the circle. But I think the actual, like, you know, it had like kind of, you know, as you went through, you got experience points, upgraded your guy, made him stronger. They battle harder and harder bosses and things like that. So I would actually, you know, I'm a subscriber to the Xbox Game Pass, so it'd be great if they re-released that onto there. It's a game that I would definitely, you know, love to play, like as a modern version. So if they ever like remade it or something like that, but it was only released in 2010, so maybe it's not deserving of a you know, re-release or anything. But no, it's a good game. If you ever see it, you know, check it out.
And if Microsoft are listening, like we're happy to take sponsorship over that, and you know, we'll play the game.
Yeah, we'll do Dante's Inferno game podcast.
We'll do the Divine Comedy as well.
Everything hell based.
Anything hell based. So let's talk about that then. So other depictions of hell and different types of media. How do you think they compare? I think you briefly talked about this at the start, Michael, where you said, you know, it's kind of different to the kind of standard.
The biblical, yeah.
The only ones that come to mind for me are kind of comedy ones, like you know, Little Nicky, South Park, Futurama, all those sort of things. They're all sort of played for laughs rather than any sort of seriousness. So.
Yeah. So the biblical depiction of hell, apparently hell is not really mentioned that much in the Bible, or at least it's not described much in the Bible. A lot of the modern depictions of hell, the thoughts of hell, do come from Dante's Inferno. It has depiction of hell which is more iconic nearly, which is funny thing. As for depictions of hell, I've seen South Park, I've seen hell in The Simpsons and Futurama. I think those are all funny. I've seen Little Nicky. As far as non-comedic, I did see a movie called Event Horizon, which is a horror movie that takes place in space. So maybe this is where my theory came from. But they have a space version of hell, basically. And Stephen, you're a fan of Doctor Who. Do you remember the episode?
Oh, the Satan Pit?
I think Yeah. So, I mean, we could almost count that maybe. But I actually looked through the Wikipedia here of depictions of hell. And there's one that my favourite one is Hell appears in Santa Claus 1959. So I would love to see
that sounds like a terrifying movie anyway. I'm not going to watch that.
Sounds pretty,
A black and white Santa Claus in hell.
That episode, just to go back, that episode of Doctor Who, I thought that's a really good one. So that's the one.
That is a really good episode.
I can't remember. Obviously, I don't know what the planet's called, but for some reason he has to go down a really deep pit, and he meets. There's a beast down there. It's like being held prisoner or something. And that's a good mention. Yeah.
But that's everything I could think of anyway.
Yeah. But obviously there's no people being souls being tortured for eternity, but yeah, there's sort of that
No,
draw between
no.
the beast and Satan, as it were, and the pit, obviously, in hell, as it were.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. What you said about the Bible, though, that I thought it would have came up a few times.
Yes, so like the idea of like fire being in hell and everything, it's not really from the Bible. I don't know if there's anybody listening who wants to correct me on this. They absolutely can write onto us. But I don't think there's many mentions of hell, many descriptions of hell, and many descriptions of fire. It's all like it's the same as the devil. A lot of those descriptions of the devil with the hooves and stuff comes from like pagan iconography.
Yeah, doesn't the devil in the Bible is usually just described as some form of temptation? Like it's usually not a physical being of sort. It's usually like like a feeling of temptation or like bad thoughts or whatever. But I do.
Yeah, it's the same with hell. It's a bit more obscure.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like that is where most of our thinking about hell and how we depict it comes from Dante's telling rather than. So what I'd like to know is, where did Dante come up with all this? Did he just like? Is this just what his idea of hell is? I suppose like everyone's idea of hell is different. You know, what you fear or what you think is torture. So
Benito mentions that in the book. He says, what is it? He says that he thinks that Dante's depiction of hell came from like a vision, or like a not like he sort of got transported to hell or something, and then he came back and wrote down what he
presupposes,
saw. What he thought.
Yeah, presupposes that Dante has seen hell. Yeah.
I think too, doesn't the Bible like, or maybe it doesn't say it in the Bible, but I guess like a lot of Christian kind of belief is that like current Earth is hell, because suffering and stuff. I'm not sure if this is very opinionated, but this is just. I feel like that's why it's not mentioned in the Bible as much, because I feel like that's
hell is other people.
Guys. Yeah, hell is all around us.
That's the thing. Now, you reminded me there of it's randomly came into my head there, but another depiction, which sort of ties back to that episode of Doctor Who. It's Good Omens by Neil Gaiman.
That's the show on Amazon, isn't it?
It's a show, but it's also a novel by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett.
Yes. I'm a big fan of both those offers, but to my shame, I have never read Good Omens.
Oh yeah, I've not read. Maybe that's going to be my next pick, but
spoilers.
I don't want to be sort of
no descriptions of the new book that's going to appear.
Yeah, so the series.
We can never do any book we've mentioned.
The series is actually really, really good, and the link to Doctor Who is that David Tennant plays one of the main characters, but it's really good. You don't really see hell that much in it, as I remember, though. But it is kind of interesting the way it's kind of like everything's really dark, and it's almost like as I remember, like a weird sort of warehouse that they're in. Like with all these different dark rooms and stuff. I can't really remember though.
Yeah.
But
I'm absolutely sure we will do some Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett books as this podcast goes on. But
absolutely, but yeah, Good Omens. That's a good recommendation for a show. Anyway. So let's move on to trivia then. So trivia, like I found it was hard to find trivia for this one, obviously, because again it's really obscure. But here's what I found. So it was published in 1976 and nominated for the 76 Hugo and Nebula Awards for Best Novel. It didn't win, as far as I'm aware, but it was nominated. I don't remember where I've seen this, but the book caused a bit of a stir when it was released. I guess because of Benito and what we talked about.
Yeah.
That probably didn't go down too well at the time, because there was. I imagine a lot of the people who read it would have known of Mussolini and probably knew him by first name, where we don't, because it was published almost 50 years ago, like so.
Yeah.
But despite that, it, as I understand, it was moderately successful and fell out of print, like I said, where it was republished. I think, as we said, to coincide with the sequel. And the last thing that I got was the sequel, entitled Escape from Hell, was released in 2009, and that was 43 years after the first book, and again it was written by Niven and Pournelle. I don't know much about it other than a quick look at the sort of blurb, and that Alan has now taken on Benito's role to, ferry people through hell essentially and show them the path to escape.
So apparently this is just on Wikipedia, and I've actually just found something that we did talk about as well. So firstly, anyway, that they say that it was a bit more successful than they actually thought it was going to be, and it college students, got more into Dante, the Divine Comedy and stuff.
And I see it's happening to us now.
Now, as we mentioned there, you said this would be a good idea for a text adventure game, which apparently one of the authors did report that he and Pournelle and Niven, that they were planning to write a script for a text adventure based on the game. Obviously that must have never came to fruition,
right.
But obviously they thought it was a good idea for a game too. So
I would love to play that.
Yeah,
I'd love to make that game, but I don't know how much you know about writing text adventure games, but that's a lot of work. There's a lot of.
It's supposed to be a rite of passage for a software engineer.
Yeah, there's a lot of text trees that you have to come up with. This leads to that and so on. Blah. Yeah,
there are a lot of cameos in this book by other science fiction writers. I'm not completely in depth about my older science fiction, to be honest, but I knew I saw one by Isaac Asimov, and I knew there was a couple of references to science fiction writers who had started religions, so I didn't know if that was a reference to Scientology and that, or would that have been in the zeitgeist as much in the 70s, but I find that interesting.
I think that definitely was touched, but they didn't mention it by name as far as I'm aware, so maybe
they didn't know.
Maybe they didn't want to give it any attention, I don't know, but it's they definitely would have known about it, L. Ron Hubbard was mentioned, was he not?
I think he was, yeah. I'm pretty sure he was, yeah.
Yeah, so they obviously would have known about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
He definitely was in that pit for the religion one. Obviously Kurt Vonnegut was mentioned too. He had
I've read Kurt Vonnegut, yeah.
He had a tomb, like a big gold tomb or something. I don't know if it was gold, it's just for some reason that's in my head, but where he was
he wrote Slaughterhouse 5, didn't he?
Yeah. Bunch of science fiction.
Yeah, I've read that, yeah. It's a very, very strange book, but it's also considered one of the best books ever, so we should read that sometime, but it's a weird book.
Yeah. Do you think... just came into my head there. So, these guys are science fiction writers, but they're putting all the other science fiction writers in hell. Do you think that was kind of like a dig?
Definitely. It was, definitely. Yeah. 100%. It was very,
Right. That's pretty funny.
It was a bit of a self-deprecating humour, definitely.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Oh, you mean about science fiction writers in general? I was kind of getting at that they were saying kind of, for example, Kurt Vonnegut. They were saying, he deserves to be in hell because his writing's bad. They thought that or something.
I think it was. I think they were poking a bit of fun at themselves as well. But yeah.
Before we go on to the book we're going to read, let's just say what else are we kind of reading or consuming media wise. I haven't really got any books on the go at the minute, so I'm keen to hear Johnny's book pick and get cracking on that. But as for other media, I just finished last night Welcome to Wrexham, and I absolutely loved it. The guys here will know that I'm not the biggest football fan, but that was a really good show and I really liked it. Great watch, would definitely recommend. Other than that, I've been watching Andor, and it's amazing. I think I mentioned that last time, but it's amazing. Mm-hmm. If you like The Mandalorian or Star Wars in general, you'll definitely like this. And that's kind of me for what I'm doing, media wise.
Yeah. So what else I am consuming? I recently finished Normal People, which is a book by Irish author Sally Rooney. I really hate parts of this book. Really, really hate parts of this book. I would love us to review it someday and tell you why I hate parts of this book. But
can you just tell me separately?
But it is,
so I don't have to read it.
It is very beautifully written at times. It's good thematically at times, but there are parts where I really, really hate it. That's all I'll say on it. I'm also listening to audio dramas. If anybody doesn't know, audio dramas they're basically like plays for your ears, so they're sort of different from audiobooks. They're a bit more performative. If I was to recommend one individually, I would say listen to The Truth. It is a anthology audio drama. It's really, really good. Most of them are science fiction based. It just to tie it onto this episode, there is an episode called Enjoy the Suffering, which actually takes place in Dante's version of hell. So, and I actually listened to that this week. That was not intentional, but I would strongly recommend that podcast. If you say you finished your audiobooks, you're between lessons, you want something, listen to The Truth. It's really, really good.
It's just in something you said there. So something else you're consuming is related to Inferno, right? I've a couple of times this week, I've noticed random references to Dante's Inferno or the Divine Comedy. Like I was on Wikipedia for something completely unrelated, and there it was, and I was like, "That's so strange." But yeah,
I know. It was a weird coincidence.
So at the minute, audiobook wise, I'm reading or listening to two. One is going to be my next pick, so I will mention it in the next section. The other one is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So Michael, you mentioned before you've never read like a really old book. Obviously this book was written, I believe Marcus Aurelius, I don't know exactly when it was written, I don't think anyone does, but he lived between 121 and 180 AD. So this book is like almost 2,000 years old. But essentially it is kind of about how he lived his life and how he thinks, others should live his life. He talks about, not fearing death a lot because, you're going to die and there's nothing you can do about it. I don't think it would be a good one for this podcast because it is quite opinionated in terms of, it is completely his opinion and whether or not you believe it or not. And it is quite hard to listen to because it is quite old language. I guess it was probably written in Latin and then converted to English, but it still sounds quite old, and the way they talk, the way they say things. But I think what you glean from it is as well the Romans' fascination with like Greek mythology and Greek stuff, Greek religion and things like that too, which I was quite interested in. But in terms of it's kind of like how you should treat other people, things like that. So it is a good book for people that would like life kind of talks, one of those kind of books. But because it was by Marcus Aurelius, and I was like, God, I am quite fascinated with the Roman kind of period, so I was like, I have to give this a listen to. So yeah, I've been listening to that. Another podcast then that I've been listening to is called The Short History Of. Essentially, each episode takes a certain topic in history, and goes into a bit of detail about it. Gives you essentially a good kind of overview of that topic. So, for example, two of the most recent episodes, one was on the Mongol Empire, one was on the real Peaky Blinders. So, if anyone's seen the show, this actual podcast will cover what the real Peaky Blinders were like.
I didn't know they were actually real.
Oh no, they were a proper gang. I don't, obviously not as dramatised. The show dramatises it a lot, but they're real.
Yeah,
he basically talks about everything like Napoleon, Spanish Armada, Stonehenge, basically any kind of topic. So each episode is kind of on each topic. But no, it's a very, very interesting podcast if you're into history. I really enjoy it, and the actual boy that does it too, he's quite interesting to listen to. But yeah, no, that's everything from me at the minute.
So I guess let's move on to the next book then. Johnny, do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So the book is called 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, and this is the one narrated by Dick Hill. So essentially, I guess just to give maybe not so much a summary of the book, but why it was written, it was actually they discuss this at the start of this audiobook. It's like Arthur C. Clarke gives a kind of like a preface almost, or a preface. He wrote the book for the actual movie, which is quite popular in the 60s, directed by Stanley Kubrick, and Stanley didn't want to write the movie based off like a movie script. He says they can be quite difficult to read through actually come up with good ideas. So he asked Arthur C. Clarke to write the book, and then they'd create the movie from that. So obviously the movie had massive, because it was, the movie came out in, like, I think it was the early 60s, so before the space launch, when the first trip to the moon or whatever. But so people were absolutely fascinated by space, and this was an absolute excellent time to release this thing, so it was very, very popular back then. But this is the book that the movie is based on. So yeah, that's all I'll say about it.
Nice one. Excited to go through that.
Yeah.
Have you guys read it before?
I've not read the book, but
Yes.
I have seen the film.
And Michael, you've read it, so
I have seen the film and read the book.
so I guess we can't do the guessing game this time, because obviously you know the premise, but
the plot, yeah.
Yeah. And give a joke guess if you want. Nah.
Go for it,
No,
Stephen.
I won't.
however, the book is quite short anyway. It's only about, I think, 6 hours of listening at normal speed. So
There are a lot of pop culture references to this book as well, so it's be good for other media.
Is it much different to the film? Actually, don't tell me that. Let me find out for myself. I'm
Yeah.
really surprised.
sure, we'll discuss. I actually haven't seen the film, so I'm going to have watched that as well by the
nice.
next podcast.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a slog. I'm not gonna lie.
I guess a movie
film
made in the
is-
60s is going to be a bit hard to
Well,
watch.
I don't know if it would matter when this film was made. It's just
I've seen the start of the film, which is utterly ridiculous. So
I liked
Yeah,
it.
the
Well, I'll
monolith.
save this for the next thing, but I liked it.
yeah,
But it is,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
we'll-
is-
Yeah, we'll talk about it, yeah.
There is times where it's like,
Yeah, it's slow.
Is that us?
okay,
But no, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about that book.
yeah, me too. It should be a fun one. So, so that kind of concludes this episode then. Unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about, we'll finish up here. Yeah, can you just go over again, Johnny, which narrator that is?
Yeah, so the book title is 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, and it's narrated by Dick Hill.
Okay, happy days. Yeah, so that'll be us for this episode. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the book.